This is All About Bitcoin, a show dedicated to all things, questions, and markets related to Bitcoin, little b for the currency, and Bitcoin, big B for the network. A collective journey to understand, apply, and use this innovation, all Bitcoin, all the time. I'm your host, Galen Moore, filling in for Christine Lee this week. And let's take a live look at the Bitcoin price. The CoinDesk Bitcoin Price Index, XBX, at 47,573. About the same place it was yesterday, about a little bit less than 1 percentage point change in the positive direction from this time on Wednesday. Not much change as we head into the end of the year here. We'll see as trade markets get perhaps even thinner heading into the New Year's holiday. Will we see some volatility? But it's been a pretty slow week for Bitcoin. And let's pull up the chart of the day.
The chart of the day is brought to you by Crypto.com, the world's fastest growing crypto app.
The final chart of the day for 2021 is an appropriately themed look at highly valued vintages of champagne as compared against stock indexes, Bitcoin, and a couple of soon-to-be irrelevant commodities. Like most wines, charts do not necessarily get better with age, and this one is no exception. Bitcoin is now up about 67% on the year, not 74%, below where it was a little before the Christmas holiday when I first caught wind of this chart. Still, that puts the orange coin above all but the top 4 champagnes for price appreciation on the year. The top bubbly for wine collectors is the Champagne Salon 2002. Only 62,000 bottles were produced, and one sells on winesearcher.com today for $1,556. That's roughly 0.033 Bitcoin or 3.3 million Satoshis. And to toast the end of a remarkable year, CoinDesk TV has put together a look back at the most significant moments in crypto markets for 2021. Without further ado, here's our look at the best of markets 2021.
The Crypto Markets Update is presented by Grayscale, the world's largest digital currency asset manager.
Breaking news, folks. Bitcoin, the world's largest cryptocurrency by market capitalization, hitting a new all-time high above $66,000. Right now, it's just taking a bit of a step back from that threshold, but it has been charging ahead. Bitcoin up about 5.6% over the past 24 hours. The largest cryptocurrency appears to have gotten a push on Tuesday from the launch of the ProShares Bitcoin Strategy ETF, the first exchange-traded fund approved by the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission to invest in Bitcoin futures.
As I said, the futures, in fact, we think are, if anything, a better place for price discovery. The regulatory aspect and the ETF wrapper make it a very compelling alternative. Certainly, there are going to be plenty of folks who will invest in Bitcoin directly. And, if they were investing in Bitcoin directly yesterday, I'm not sure they're going to be the first people to invest in the ETF, but there are a ton of people who were waiting for this opportunity, both buy and hold investors and the trading community.
We're deep into a bull market right now. I don't think we're at the end of that bull market, hopefully, but the key, I think, internationally, not just for the stock markets, but also for the crypto markets, is whether the situation in China is contained.
After the massive wave of interest and investment in Bitcoin, they're understanding that they need to start diversifying away from the risk of Bitcoin alone. And as the digital assets grow into an asset class, they need more assets. And ETH is one that's captured everybody's attention, not just from its use cases, but that it fills all of the different super capital asset classes that they look for.
Is Bitcoin reacting to Ethereum?
I wouldn't say fully. It didn't hurt. It's kind of like a match next to the gasoline and things just kind of lit on. But I think Ethereum was the starter.
Well, Ethereum is outperforming Bitcoin, even though Bitcoin's up 70% this year and the S&P is only up about 22%. And a lot of the alternatives like Avalanche and the other ones you mentioned earlier are outperforming Ethereum.
Another thing that's been happening in the crypto world, which is very interesting this week, is that some of the altcoins, most of them were drawn down to support levels along with what would happen with Bitcoin, but there's a couple of large cap projects that have done very well. One being Polkadot, which is down today, but actually reached on Monday new all-time highs. And the other one is Solana, which is actually up to another new high as we speak. When I looked last, it was trading at like 76.60. And these are two of the top cryptocurrencies by market cap. They're actually positioned number 9 and number 10.
No, it's not dead. I mean, people always say that Litecoin is dead. It's been that way for years. I'm the managing director of the Litecoin Foundation. I've been working on Litecoin full-time for the past 4 years. Recently, we're doing a big push to add fungibility to Litecoin. So it's a project called MWeb, which stands for Mimblewimble Extension Blocks.
If the XRP ledger is fantastic for payments, and payments are, trillions of dollars, it's a massive market, is that enough? And I think you can make an argument that it's not. So the XRP ledger doesn't have any DeFi built into it. There's people who love XRP and there's people who love DeFi, and there just may not be much intersection of those two. Whatever obstacles appear in the, let's say, in the XRP ledger ecosystem, either from the SEC actions or from other things, you have to think that because there's billions of dollars at stake, that people will be able to come together enough to fix it. But that's really all that's holding these systems together.
The GameStop issue really highlighted how blockchain infrastructure can help solve a lot of the problems in our markets. Ultimately, a blockchain allows you to know who owns what when. And you actually don't know that in today's financial markets.
I don't know even that Dogecoin would fit within the SEC's ambit, depending on whether or not one would consider purchases and sales to be securities purchases and sales. So, but look, I think people buy and sell lots of things, and I always give the same advice. You've got to know what you're getting into. If you're getting into it because you think it's fun, that's fine, but understand that you can lose money. If you're getting into something with the idea of making money over the long term, make sure you're asking lots of questions and not just following the crowd. You've got to make your own decisions. Don't come complaining to the government if you lose your money.
Dogecoin is everything that's wrong with the markets, in the sense that what you have is the gamification of markets. You have people who were shut in their house. They couldn't go to Vegas and gamble. They couldn't gamble on sports. Humans like to gamble. Particularly guys, actually, but not just guys, but humans like to gamble, and they got free money. And what'd they do? They deposited it in trading accounts and they started trading in stupid stuff.
I think meme coins should definitely be taken seriously. I mean, first, on the most basic level, there is real money behind them. So this is not fake money. This is real money. And as our guests can talk about, people can actually make millions off of these coins, right? So they are serious on that level. But I think, this show is called Community Crypto, and this is about community-driven investment. And I think that's a really interesting and important phenomenon. And, these meme coins are great examples of that.
I watched a massive pump and dump happen right before my eyes, inadvertently led by Elon Musk, I'm sure he wasn't pumping and dumping himself, right? He just enjoyed it and I was having fun with it. And I watched all these influencers. Literally, I was called, it was a penny a share of a penny. It was 1 penny. And I started getting the calls, buy this. And the exact words, we're driving it up to $1. That's a pump and dump.
I think that being disappointed in Elon Musk is a just punishment for caring about what he said in the first place. Elon Musk is a great entrepreneur. He's a really smart guy. He sends rockets up into space. The rockets come back. You can use them. I mean, that's pretty awesome stuff. But clearly he's not, a cryptocurrency expert, and it's not his forte. He seems to be having a lot of fun trolling a lot of people on Twitter. And I think, getting rankled about that is kind of your problem.
I guess if I had to go with anything, it would probably be Ripple at this point, which I know is still trying to work out the situation with the SEC. But I know it's been getting a lot of buzz just from what I see in terms of comments from the younger generation that are looking to trade. So Ripple is what we have our eye on right now.
I think Dogecoin really is that dog-themed token to rule the world. But the thing about SHIB that I think is interesting, if anything, is that you can access DeFi with SHIB. Dogecoin is on its own proof of work chain. It's not really well represented in DeFi ecosystems, but with something like SHIB, if you're interested in it and you're operating on chain, you can there's a lot you can do with it that you can't do with the Dogecoin.
Right. The transaction sizes are smaller than compared to Bitcoin. So obviously, Bitcoin has a mix of institutions and many other different types of algo traders. But when it comes to Shiba Inu, we do have people trading big volumes. But essentially, I think when you see the number of people who are trading versus the volume you're doing, I think it's definitely a smaller size there and more retail friendly.
No, I think unit bias plays a huge role. You know what I mean? Like somebody would much rather own 1,000 Dogecoins instead of 0.0000018 Bitcoin. You know what I mean? Like it's a psychological thing. You know what I mean? If you're gonna get into crypto, it's intimidating, right? If you're first getting into crypto, Bitcoin is Ethereum's thousands of dollars, Bitcoin's $60,000, $50,000, $60,000. Like it's very intimidating. So somebody would rather be like, oh, I want to get into crypto, but I don't want to spend whatever money, even though it's going to be the same amount of money, whether you buy Bitcoin or Dogecoin. It just feels better buying something cheaper. It's almost as if in your mind, you're not making as big of a risk.
It's an example of a democratization of finance, of just sort of individual retail investors trying to get in on the action.
All right, that was the best of the markets 2021 from CoinDesk TV. And with me here now to discuss the year in review is CoinDesk Markets team's managing editor, Brad Keoun. Welcome, Brad.
Thanks, Galen. You're going to be breaking out the Salon 2002 this evening or tomorrow evening? I think
no, I tend to stick to the more value buys, like champagne adjacent winemaking regions. Burgundy, Alsace, Loire. Yeah. I'm a value buyer when it comes to wine. I actually find that there's nothing like the poverty of a journalism career to really enhance the palate. When you grow up on the good
that's
stuff.
That's one thing that we have that in common, Galen. And so I raise a glass to you.
Indeed, yeah, to another bubble year in 2022. What do you think? Should we raise a glass in the metaverse? I gather DCG is going to be hosting a party for a virtual ball drop. Maybe we can raise a virtual glass of bubbly. I don't think it'll be as satisfying, and I'm not sure it's safe to drink while you're wearing a virtual reality headset. Although that won't be necessary for Decentraland, I guess.
Also, my 12-year-old could probably handle that, but
okay. So your 12-year-old will go in your place. You'll be watching the fireworks in Austin. Yeah, I have no idea whether there's anything like that even happening in Boston. I sort of hope there isn't. So what do you think? 2021 highlights. What's the we just watched sort of a bunch of them roll by. What's the biggest in your mind? What stands out?
I guess a couple things. Number one, just watching that video and thinking about what, people who are more Bitcoin focused might think about this sort of the wide array of tokens and comments from people and, the Ripple guy and the Tesos and, it really was. Tesla's obviously not a huge story for 2021.
Yeah,
but it was
a year of altcoins, but not either of those two.
Right. We have Polygon. I think, Doge, SHIB,
right.
If you kind of went back to this time last year, nobody was talking about any of that stuff. And even though it was kind of happening, it was happening. People were working on it in the skunk works. And it's just a reminder of, crypto markets are so unpredictable and this industry is moving so fast and stuff that wasn't even really on most people's horizons ends up being the talk of the year. Yeah. And I think that's just it's
interesting, how that has really played out, I think, on a kind of a calendar year basis. If you look at like the end of 2020, you had this very strong run for Bitcoin. Altcoins, maybe if you consider Ether an altcoin, that was perhaps the only one that was really in the conversation. And you look at 2021 and it's Solana, Avalanche, and Luna. That's the story of the year. And if you sort of if you weren't invested in one of them, I think you're probably looking back on where you went wrong, where you missed it. And I think it's got to play in, especially with the way it has kind of gone with the calendar year. It's got to. I feel a sense that there's a potential for like a kind of a cyclical shift, right? You sort of looking at 2022, what is going to be the next, the next new altcoin to occupy those spots? Is it going to be something DeFi 2.0? Is it going to be some new meme coin? Something that perhaps, takes hold in one of the emerging markets, like Brazil or India, for example. I think investors have to be asking that question. And then I think it comes back to like fundamentally a kind of a question of like, in a way, are large investors or small are going to be in the driver's seat for 2022? If it's smaller investors, I think you might see any number of things happen. But if it's larger investors, then you might really see a kind of a cyclical shift back to Bitcoin.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said. I mean, again, trying to go back and put myself back in that mentality of, what I was thinking about in early 2021 or what we were writing about, what we were talking about. And it was about, investors in traditional markets diversifying into Bitcoin as like, getting off zero, they talked about. And it seems like here we are at the end of 2021, beginning of 22, and people are thinking about wanting to have a diversified crypto portfolio. Right? Because it's like you don't know what's going to
move beyond that. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, where that, I mean, and honestly, like that narrative has sort of shriveled on the vine, hasn't it? Like we've been talking about when are the large allocators going to allocate a small percentage to crypto? When are you going to see like true institutional participation, and how much of a difference is that going to make? I don't think it's happening, and I yet at any in any really meaningful way. I think sort of large. Faster moving, more nimble, large, what we would consider large investors in crypto are the ones that are leading the market still. And yeah, that I think has played out. The tail of the tape in 2021 tells you that because of that diversification of crypto, right? Diversification beyond Bitcoin and Ether. Maybe that'll change in 2022. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, with Bitcoin specifically, I mean, it really, I'm just going to fall back on one of my talking points. It is one of the most fascinating things that humans have ever invented. It really is. I mean, it absolutely has a place. It's earned its place in history, and not just in financial and monetary history, but period. I mean, it penetrated to the public consciousness. It got even further in that in 2021. And it has a way of defying expectations, both on the upside and the downside. People were talking about $100,000 Bitcoin this year, and here we are, we made it to the all-time high of 69,000, and now we're down at 50,000. I don't think people could have, predicted all of that. No way.
Let's leave aside my naive predictions, and let's talk about my naive hopes. And one of my fondest naive hopes is that we can leave behind the stock to flow narrative in 2022. What a shallow and what a serious bit of chart crime that is, and my hope that as sort of people who are interested in Bitcoin and interested in making the case both financially, technologically, and in all the dimensions that you described, Brad, can we move beyond that sort of that kind of monkeying around with numbers and naivete, and get to a point where we can actually talk about things that actually have a sense of how markets work. I certainly hope so, and perhaps ending the year below 50,000 will really be the nail in the coffin of that one, right?
I think I'm maybe even more cynical than you are, Galen. I mean, I start with no human knows what tomorrow brings. I mean, there are people who may be better at predicting the future, but nobody knows what tomorrow brings. Nobody could have predicted 2020. Nobody could have predicted 2021, and to me, the stock to flow model, it's pretty far off track at this point in time, but who knows what tomorrow brings, and who knows if it's any worse than any of the other models that humans make all the time to predict the future.
That's right. No, that's a very good point. It's as good as anything else out there. That's right. Yeah. Well, so I don't know your thoughts then. Like BTC dominance, 40% now versus 70% at the start of 2021. What direction is that going in 2022?
That's a really good question. Once again, for my last comment, Bitcoin seems to take off when nobody's really expecting it. And it's the law of large numbers. I mean, Bitcoin's still, by far the biggest cryptocurrency, about $900 billion market cap. Here we are at the end of 2021. And, a 20% increase in Bitcoin is worth a lot in terms of Bitcoin dominance ratio percentage points. So everything else can moon a lot on its own. But, when the big 800-pound gorilla starts moving, you better get out of the way. And you can see those numbers pop up pretty fast.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think, it's sort of it'd be unwise to count Bitcoin out, but I do think that there's a lot of room for interest in some of the things that have emerged in 2021. I have a lot of confidence in the growth of new layer ones, including the networks that have made 2021 their kind of standout years, and also I think looking ahead to perhaps new layer one Ethereum alternatives that may emerge. I think DeFi is actually like kind of tremendously underbought right now. And you look at what's happening there, it's still in a way the most interesting things in crypto are happening in the DeFi context. And so what will 2022 bring for that? I think, the DeFi 2.0, as poorly defined as that is, there is a kind of a second generation of decentralized finance projects emerging that have new ways of doing things, just as much as kind of Uniswap had a new way of approaching to the DEX problem, right? So I do think we're going to see interesting new projects and coins to look at in 2022. But in terms of whether they will kind of take hold of momentum the way alts have in 2021, there are so many factors involved in that. I think many of them actually are on the macro scale and highly unpredictable. It would be very foolish to kind of turn your back on Bitcoin at this point.
Well, I mean, one thing I think a 2021 story is, Ethereum, they went through this hard fork with the EIP 1559 that where they're burning Ether, the gas fees, and that seriously reduced, the net new supply of Ethereum. And it gave, people an alternative potentially to Bitcoin as the inflation hedge of choice. But what I would also say is nothing really in crypto is even close to Bitcoin in terms of its perception as a potential macro asset. And, you look at El Salvador and, El Salvador didn't adopt Ethereum. It would be ridiculous if you saw any of these other sovereigns adopt Ethereum.
Do you think we'll see another country even at that scale?
If they're gonna adopt anything, it's probably gonna be Bitcoin.
Will we see another El Salvador size or larger country adopt in 2022? Another tin pot dictator? Forgive me.
I mean, you may see some of these things that are more driven by the rank and, by the people. I mean, we were just looking at Turkey and the collapse of the Turkish lira. And I was reading that, searches are taking off in Bitcoin. It could be that, if people feel like they don't really have a good alternative to their domestic currency or, maybe they don't have other options.
I agree. Although I think there's a big difference between that and, somebody like Nayib Bukele adopting Bitcoin. I have my deep-seated suspicions, of the motives. And again, we always have to ask that question: who benefits, Bitcoin or the new adopter? Right? Who's benefiting more here, MicroStrategy or Bitcoin? I would say, I think some of these cases, I'm very interested to see that spread. But I think until it does spread and we see, people with a broader set of motives, perhaps adopting Bitcoin, sovereigns with a broader set of motives adopting Bitcoin, we're not going to necessarily be able to say that we're there as a macro asset in the way that you're describing.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, if people talk about, some people think that Bitcoin is a Ponzi scheme, or that's like a narrative out there, which I think, those of us who are covering the business, we sort of understand, like, yeah, this is a real thing. It's a technological movement.
It's beyond that, right?
There's definitely a certain element to when did you get in? Right? Like if you got in super early, you're pretty rich right now.
We put that one to rest in 2022 as well, right? Because I feel like anybody
adopted Bitcoin,
there's a long way to go.
Would be super rich, one of the richest countries in the world. So
anyway, I think we gotta wrap up. They're telling me it's time. We could go on here. Brad, maybe we need a longer format. Brad, thank you for joining us on this last CoinDesk TV show. We're going to need a
Methuselah of that that high end Prosecco.
Yeah, we need a Jeroboam. That's right. Well, folks, that was Brad Keoun, managing editor of markets. And that's it for All About Bitcoin. I'm Galen Moore. CoinDesk TV is off tomorrow to observe the New Year holiday. I'll be back with the first 2022 edition of All About Bitcoin on Monday, January 3 at 3 p.m. New York. First Mover returns at Monday, 9 a.m., followed by The Hash at noon. You're watching CoinDesk TV. Happy New Year, everybody.